So hi everyone. Today we have a special edition of Project Constellation, and today we will focus only on toolkit and particular part that we discovered in the toolkit, how to use it, Constellations as a method. And I have an amazing colleague with me who has been together in the team since the beginning of the project, and earlier it has been already 4 or 5 years that we have been cooperating together. And she's our guest and also a guest speaker and also master who has been together and discovering with me and with other team members Constellations. Marcela, hi.
Hi, Lama. Nice to see you.
A bit of introduction of you, where you're from, what is your background, and how you're connected with the project.
Yes, thank you very much. Greetings to everyone and greetings from Croatia. As Lama said, we have been working together already for quite some time. And how I got to this project and to this field in the first place is that I studied pedagogy and education as my formal education. And later on, I got involved into international projects, and somehow we met each other and started exploring the topic of constellations. In the meantime, I have been also developing myself and learning how to facilitate constellations. I've been learning for the past 3 years about the principles, setting up my own constellations and working with others. And in this project, my primal role was coordinating the project in front of Forum Freedom in Education from Croatia. And I have also been part of the team that has been testing out the workshops, the tools, trying out different options, exchanging, developing, collaborating with teachers, working with youth. And I'm here representing the organization from Croatia, as I said, Forum for Freedom in Education, who is very active in the field of bringing non-formal learning and non-formal education into the formal learning environment. So we work a lot with teachers, with schools, with other associations on a local, national, and international level to bring all of these different methods and ways of learning into schools, to work directly with the educators and youth themselves.
So connecting together formal and non-formal education as well.
Yes, basically. That's our specialty.
And very, very good specialty, I would say. You mentioned constellations, and yes, both of us, we have been discovering constellation as a method since beginning. Did you know anything before? What is constellation, and how was your path discovering this method?
Yeah, I would say I was so naive. I had no idea what this whole thing was about. When we first started together, I was just a part of the team. I was there to support the training logistically, to take care of visibility of all of these details. And then in the first training, it really hit me hard. And I was not expecting, even though I was not formally participating in the training like everyone else who came there to learn about the methodology. Somehow it got me, and then we had 3 more trainings in Latvia and Slovenia, and slowly it got hooked on me. It's like I couldn't shake it off anymore. And when this project was approved almost more than 20 months ago, I decided to go deeper into it and really discover it. So I joined a learning group in Croatia that is based on Hellinger's principles, and we are learning to set up constellations according to Hellinger. On the other hand, I also have some experience with the constellations from the Netherlands, and I have also been influenced by that branch of constellations, which has developed more in the sense of organizational systems, business, and applications of constellations in the business by using intuition, by using representatives, and just for getting a different perspective on issues at hand.
as you said, it was actually your road from zero till something, I wouldn't say till Z because it's something that is not finished, but something that is in the process. And now taking a look back on your road, I can imagine that we have viewers who are familiar with constellations as a method, and I can imagine that we have listeners who have no clue what it is all about. What would you say for yourself, looking back on your road? What is constellation as a method?
Well, yeah, there are many perspectives, many definitions. How I see it, for me, it's simply a way how to get in touch with myself, with my body, and explore my own relationship with other people that are part of my life, or I'm a part of their life, either in personal or professional field, by setting up a spatial, a 3D representation of myself and other people, or topics that might be relevant for me. So it would basically mean that I take a cup, maybe if I don't have any other resources at my disposal, and I just decide, okay, this cup represents me, and then I put it on the table or in the space, and then I see, okay, then I have a problem or something. I'm not sure about what's my next step in my career. So then I would take another cup and put it somewhere in space to represent my next step in the career. And this is already a 3D representation. It is an image, a situation that is showing through the, by putting objects into the space to represent them. And from there, what is the next step is just observing what is happening, what is the relationship, where is each of the elements looking, where is my focus, am I really looking at my next step or in the career, or there is something else that is attracting my attention. It can be any topic at all. So yeah, in briefly, a spatial representation, a physical representation of a certain situation by using objects or people, if we have a group of people to set it up.
Very often, I will go to a bit more provocative question, like very often when we introduce the constellation as a method, then some who have been familiar, they say, wow, girls, how did you do that? You need to have a lot of education, it's not really safe, you need a lot of observance from psychotherapists or psychologists. And some say, wow, this is amazing that you bring it out in education. And well, let's be honest, there are these very contradictory opinions. What would you say from your experience in the project, how it has been? Is it dangerous? Is it something that is so dangerous?
Yes. Well, what I noticed is that when I talk about this topic, it really depends on the previous experience of the person that I'm speaking with. So even my colleagues who really haven't seen what I'm doing, and they maybe had some previous experience with the constellations, it's simply not the same experience. There are different perspectives, different ways how to facilitate, different ways how to use constellations, and different ways how they are taught as a part of psychotherapy, as a part of trainings, as a part of business. So for me, what I understood is that often this maybe resistance comes from having maybe a negative experience on their own, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like this. For me, constellations are not psychotherapy. This is something that is very important to mention. For me, constellations is just a method, one way that was introduced through psychotherapy, but these days it has expanded to so many branches, and it cannot be seen as a psychotherapeutical method anymore, because it is not, and it doesn't require at least from my own perspective, this kind of training. And yes, we took this into schools because we were working with teachers, with psychologists, pedagogues, and 2 people only had previous experience because they participated in other projects that we organized. And it was very eye-opening for most of the teachers. We had one workshop organized for them to participate. We had focus groups. We were meeting continuously in the last 1 year. And most of them really took what we did in the focus groups and they applied it in classrooms. They worked with kids. I will maybe show you a bit later what is that we did, working on the topic of belonging. And once they did it, it started flowing very easily. When this first step was made in the school, it's important to find this one person who will initiate, will make the first step and trust and be open to something new. And the feedback that they're sending back, it's amazing. And several of them, they started their own training. So they enrolled into new groups to learn about constellations, first for themselves, to see what is that they need to work on for themselves and by themselves, and later to see how to apply it in schools, because I do have some colleagues who are using it in schools for private counseling. But with the frame in this project, we focus more on the group setting, how to work in the class, how to work with the topics of belonging, how to talk about family, how to talk about nationality, identity, and etc.
Yeah, you mentioned that constellations have several branches, and if we could say that in this project we can particularly look at the constellation in formal and non-formal education. What would you say, what is the difference? What are the topics that we discovered there? What is the approach that we open up constellation, in particular in this area?
Yes. In formal setting, for example, schools or any kind of institutions, they have their own limitations. So when kids go to school, they're there to learn, to be a part of a social group, to educate themselves. And often there is a limitation of teachers being allowed only to talk about the things that are part of the school environment. For example, they should not get involved into personal topics or into family topics unless it is maybe a psychologist or a pedagogue who is in charge of that in the school. So class teachers, they would be crossing the limits of their profession and their job if they would be going into these kind of topics. On the other hand, in the informal field, when kids are outside of the school and when they come to participate in workshops, like in your case in Latvia, you had workshops in the youth center. So then it's a different context. Then they can ask their own questions. It is possible to work on very deep and personal topics, and then we work with them in a bit different way. So in schools, we were basically conducting workshops on the topic of belonging. So where do I belong? Where is my place? Who is there around me? Simply to raise awareness of this bigger system, or as I called it, a family. They were building family portraits to see that they do belong somewhere. And what I noticed that belonging, it was not my observation, but belonging is one of the strongest human needs. And when we miss this first bonding in our family of origin, in the primal social group, when we don't get this feeling of belonging, of love or care, it often results in feeling excluded or abandoned. And we, as we grow up, we repeat these patterns as adults as well. And what we noticed in schools, those kids, when we were working with them, those who had troubles in schools with learning, maybe with fighting each other or bullying. They had they basically didn't set up anyone to represent their family system. So they would put just themselves and maybe one parent, maybe brother and sister. So it was quite, it was immediately obvious that they are disconnected from their family of origin, and they don't feel maybe connection to one of the parents, something. So it was a pattern that I saw was repeating from between different classes, different environments, totally different young people. And what I heard from later from the pedagogues and psychologists is that they told me that these are the kids that they are also a part of all kinds of subgroups where they find their belonging, like all of these troublemakers in the society or gangs, or they start doing drugs, because these groups provide for them this, they give them the sense of belonging that they missed in the first place from their family. And yeah, that's about it. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, definitely. Now you already started to talk about sense of belonging on the already concrete activities. Tell me, how was this process regarding the toolkit? You have developed some workshops on this topic. How was it, and what kind of workshops within this topic you have developed, discovered?
Yes, so we had two different target groups. So we were working with youth, and we were working with educators and support staff in schools. So I had a bit different approach with both groups. And for students, I was bringing already some kind of version of workshops that were already tried out. But I was not, I didn't formalize them completely. I honestly told them that this is the first time that we're introducing something like this, that all of it is a work in progress, that and we are inviting them to simply be open to it and explore whatever is there for them, and to give us feedback, to talk about it. And basically this was the process with the students. And then with the teachers, we collect from them the daily topics that they're maybe struggling with, either with colleagues, either with parents of students, with students. And I would bring all the resources that I had and explain. In the beginning we worked with the methodology itself, and then later we simply explored together how we can look at something from the perspective of a systemic perspective, and by using constellations as a tool. And it was a very dynamic and changing process. Sometimes there were two focus groups, one after another, and each of them had completely different process, because when we went through the first one, I already had new information and more insights, and then the second group was totally different because they brought in different information, different topics. And it was amazing how these adolescents who were the most troubled ones, at least they're labeled like this at schools. I was working with a group of 10 of them, and first two workshops we simply worked on solution focused approach, goals, and something like that. And the last workshop was really using constellations to set up the countries that they feel connected to, maybe where they want to move away. And they were instantly hooked. And what they told me is in the feedback, they said, oh, those previous two workshops, they were a bit boring, but this we could repeat again. And they actually asked me to repeat again. So when the next school year starts, I will definitely approach them and see what is it that what is it that they still want to explore, because there was basically no explanations. It was a pure experience. They were just standing in the space, representing maybe for somebody Germany, maybe for somebody Croatia, maybe Bosnia, or because we have origins from different countries in this part of Europe. And it was amazing. They were instantly hooked. They wanted more and more and more. And then there is another teacher in that school who is also trained a bit in this, also participated in focus groups. And then she later had 3 more workshops with them because they were asking that they want to do it again. And I told them, well, here's your teacher, my colleague, so she can help you out with that. And it was really, really amazing process. And they don't have any fears. They're super open to it. Maybe that's the impact of education, that we go through certain formal education, and when we grow up we are a bit scared or afraid, but for them, I didn't really think the teenagers will be that open, but it was really mind-blowing.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely hooked me, and you were my teacher all this time, and I have been learning a lot from you, and thank you so much. And because your trust to youngsters as well, that they will show what is needed for them, is, I think, one of the key things, that we trust you, that we don't come to the workshops what we have planned, but also we trust youngsters to co-create them. But in this toolkit, tell me, please, what people can find, what kind of workshop they can find, and how they can practically use. And you already teased us that you have prepared something for us as well, that you will show something.
Yes, definitely. So there are basically 2 workshops in the toolkit that I would say that really cover the topic of sense of belonging, and there are more of them that go into the topics of relationships, personal relationship or relationships with others. All of them are based on constellations in some way, but these 2 are the ones that really we tried out in different contexts with different people, also as a part of one international training last year. So one of them is you will find it under the title of where do I belong? And the goal of this one was really to see for them to see where do they belong. And we talked about belonging by choice and belonging by default, because we get born into a certain family, we get born into certain country, sometimes a nationality, even religion. So many things are already predetermined by the time we arrive, and at the start there is not much choice. So there is one difference between that and then later when we do have a chance to choose and belong somewhere by our choice. And somehow we came to the topic of family, and in the beginning I was simply testing out to see what is happening with the group, because it was the first time that I saw them, the kids in school. So I didn't know their family backgrounds, what was there. I simply went with trust that everything will be okay. And so we slowly went to the family topic, and I talked very openly about it. I also shared my own examples. They were super curious to hear how I found out about this or that, and they were very much hooked. So we had some tools, and I will shift my camera so you can see it a bit. We used so-called wooden pegs. I already set something up before, so you can see it here. So basically, the task for them was to set up all the members of their family that they consider that belong to their family. And I told them who are the people that we consider as a part of our own family system. So I told them, okay, my brothers and sisters belong to my family, my parents, my grandparents, aunts, uncles, previous partners from parents, grandparents, etc. So we were going through it, and then they were also asking questions. Is this person is not alive? Do they belong? And then we said yes. It doesn't matter if they're alive or not; they still belong. So their task was basically to use these wooden figurines, and each of them was working in one piece yeah, in their own place, and their task was to set up their own family system in any way they found it useful for them. Or actually, the task was to set up a family portrait. So they were creating a 3D portrait. And this is something that I set up for myself. Let's say this is an ideal picture of a family system. And most 99% of the families are usually not like this. So it could be that they had different setups of the maybe different sizes of the figurines. And then later what we added also is we used buttons to place maybe to represent a house where they live, or a village, or a city where they live, or the country they were born, or maybe the country where their parents come from, because there were some youngsters who were coming from multicultural backgrounds. And then we were also exploring what is the relationship between these members. So they had arrows, different kinds of arrows. So they would put arrows according to their inner feeling, what's that they feel, where certain members are looking at. So maybe somebody's looking into the circle, maybe somebody's looking outside of the circle, etc. So there can be many variations. And yeah, what I noticed is that only this was enough to already create a certain connection, and connection with the system that they were representing, but also connection inside of the group. And what they were saying afterwards is that they felt more connected with the rest of the people in their class, because they learned something about each other's families, and because they see that all the families are totally different, and at the same time very much similar. And later we had an exhibition, so they set up their own family systems, and we were going to visit one family and another, and
in the same time, I opened up the toolkit, and I see that on toolkit it is the number of 75, page 75, and I see that there are like steps also described about the workshop. So anyone who can read this workshop just needs to follow the steps.
Yes, absolutely. The steps are there as something that we have tried out as a starting point. And it's definitely something that can be developed. In the meantime, I already figured out different ways what can be done, because we have figurines, but it's not necessary that you have figurines. For example, I cut out these different shapes and different sizes of materials that can be used instead of figurines, and this is showing the direction also, so it is 2 in 1. Or you can use shells, stones, really different kinds of materials, buttons, shoes, whatever is there at hand. So yeah, if follow the steps, explore what is there, and it is a starting point for you. The same we did with countries.
Yeah, yes. That is another workshop that I see on page 80. It's a map is not a territory. Could you describe what is there? What is the main essence of this workshop?
Yes. Well, the essence of this workshop was simply to explore belonging to a wider system. Because from my own personal experience, I have noticed that the fact that I became aware that I was not born in Croatia, for example, that I was born between 2 countries. So I was born when there was no Yugoslavia, and I was born, Croatia was still not formally existing. And then my parents were born in a totally different country, and grandparents, a totally different system that existed before. It really gave me more connection to these different systems and different countries that exist now in a bit different form. And this is where the starting point of this workshop was. So I took this experience into the training and into the focus groups. And it really showed that there is a significant connection between an individual and a specific place. Can be a country, can be a city, can be a village, or an ethnical group or a culture. And there are many parts of our identities that we take over from belonging to these groups, either consciously or unconsciously. And it is really significant part. And I remember one question by one colleague. She said, well, I totally don't feel that I belong to the country where I was born or where I lived. And I saw a lot of confusion in her. It was, she was just sitting there, and it was very difficult to connect to it. And the same was with youngsters. So those who already knew their roots, where their grandparents came from, the places where they lived before or moved away, I saw that there was this, like, they had a smile on their faces, and they felt really strong and proud when they were presenting. And then for others who were not sure about their origins in terms of countries, they were quite confused in their identity, and most usually causes also loneliness. And that was the idea of this workshop, to build awareness of belonging to a wider system. Yes, we have our primary family. Maybe maybe the person didn't experience their own family, maybe they didn't meet them, maybe they lived in a dormitory or some orphanage house. There are many different situations that happen through life. But when we put a bit bigger perspective of belonging to a country or a nationality or ethnical group, it also builds some kind of stability and sense of safety and belonging for the person. And as a result, it creates more confidence in a young person to really to develop and to walk their path in the future.
In both of these workshops, how till what extent the person who is leading the process needs to be familiar with constellations?
Mm-hmm. In these two workshops, I would say minimum. Really, there is no need to know any theory, any principles behind, because it's not that essential to organize these workshops. I would say it's just like a workshop like any other. Constellations are in the background, it's how it works, but to really do this in a class or a group, you don't need any special training. It was made in a way that it is accessible to anyone, and what is enough is just trust in the process, trust in the young people that they will find their own way, and probably each of them will have totally different experience with it, and it's fine. It is it is just the way it is.
And still, we also would like to support the ones who are brave, and would like to discover something new and would like to discover particular these two workshops. We would like also to give our full support by offering online workshops, like try out these workshops. Would it be possible, Marcela, that we do it? And is there particular something that people need to know? Maybe they need to prepare something, or they need to have a class, or they can do it alone. How would you imagine that we could do it also practically online?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's now in this time of such a crisis, it's an opportunity to search for different ways of working together. And there are ways of connecting via Zoom and just simply practicing with each other. I would say that it doesn't require a group or anyone with you. If you want to participate, we simply gather online, and it's enough maybe to have some papers, pens, some kind of objects that you might use for yourself, and then we can see how it is possible to use these objects to work on the topics that are relevant for you. And that would be the starting point, just to think what are the topics, what is it that is causing me trouble in terms of working with you or working with colleagues, and we take it from there to see the systemic perspective on it. So what are these different factors, different things that have an impact on the one same maybe occurring or repeating event or a problem.
So this is invitation for you and for colleagues around us, the ones who are working in the youth field, either in formal or non-formal education. It doesn't matter your background, or you're familiar with constellations or not familiar, but if you're curious and would like to try something new, and you would like to try out these 2 workshops with Toolkit, then you will see online the online offer or the training workshop that you can meet Marcela and me, and we will join and we will support you and guide the workshops. The information coming soon. Thank you so much, Marcela, for the talking and the sharing.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, and we continue to offer these workshops to people. We continue to lead them, and I'm pretty sure that you can also find Marcela in Croatia and beyond Croatia to share these workshops. That's why we did it. That's why we create them, to also to share with people what we have discovered. Yeah, just to round up, a bit confusion. I'm using my colleague's Zoom, so I'm not Kristina, I'm Lauma, but we are in the same team, and we are from Latvia, and soon you will see after this video invitation to join our online workshop on the constellations and how to use them, particularly working with youth, with me and Marcela. And yeah, I hope that this will be a video that helps you to discover something new, actually, discover and explore new method and explore something new to yourself, especially this time when we are looking for new solutions. And definitely Constellation is a 21st century method that brings a lot of insights, a lot of perspectives, reflections, both for adults and youth, and it is very, very, I would say, very useful method to have you in the pocket as a youth worker. So thank you so much. Have a good day, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.